There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. No warning, no preparation, just a single sentence, and everything before it stops existing. This is the story of a father who hadn't stepped outside his own home for 4 years, and a son who showed up at his door with just one sentence. You're coming with me, whether you want to or not. What followed over the next 25 miles was something neither of them could have predicted. A road, silence, and something that would change both of their lives forever. But before we go further, tell me something. Where are you watching this from, and what time is it there right now? I want to see just how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. You know the kind of man who never stops moving? The one who gets home from work and doesn't sit down, doesn't rest, just finds something else to fix? That was Glenn Mercer, 56 years old, an industrial welder in Michigan, 32 years in the same trade. Every morning, for 30 sharp. Coffee, black, no sugar. Lunch packed the night before. 40-minute drive to the factory. His hands told the story of his life. Rough, scarred, burned in places where metal had kissed skin too many times. And he wore every mark like a badge. Glenn wasn't a talker. Never had been. His wife, Diane, used to joke that he had more conversations with his tools than with people. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. He didn't say, "I love you" often. Didn't sit down to talk about feelings. But he showed it. Fixing things before anyone asked. Working extra hours when money got tight. Being there, without needing to say a word. That was Glenn. His son, Nathan, was different and not. 29 years old. Living alone about 40 minutes away. A steady job in logistics. Quiet life. No drama. Like his father, he didn't complain. Didn't make noise. He handled things. But there was one difference. Nathan knew when to ask for help. Glenn didn't. There was a phrase Glenn had said his entire life. Every time Nathan fell, every time something didn't go his way, Glenn would look at him and say, "Get up. A man walks on his own two legs." Nathan had heard it hundreds of times. Maybe more. At first, it stung. Later, it became something else. Almost like a code between them. A strange kind of encouragement. "I believe you can handle it." That's what it meant. Even if it didn't sound like it. Diane balanced them both. Warm where Glenn was cold. Talkative where he was silent. Faithful where he was neutral. Every night, before going to bed, she would sit in their room, in front of a small image of the Virgin Mary resting on the dresser, and pray. Glenn never said a word about it. Didn't believe. Didn't question. He simply let it be. No one expected everything to change on a Thursday afternoon. 2:17 p.m. Nathan's phone rang. It was his mother. Her voice was steady, but too steady. The kind of calm that hides something breaking underneath. "Son, your father had an accident. He's at the hospital. Come now." No questions. Nathan grabbed his keys and left. At the factory, Glenn had been working on an elevated platform. Something shifted. Something gave way. And in a split second, he fell. Just over 3 meters. Not a deadly height. But sometimes, it's not about how far you fall. It's about how you land. Nathan found his mother in the waiting room. "How is he?" he asked. Diane didn't answer right away. Just a pause. A small one. But enough to say everything. They're running tests. His spine was affected. They sat, waiting. Time stretched. 2 hours later, the doctor walked toward them. You know that walk. Slow. Careful. Like each step carries weight. Before he even spoke, Nathan already knew. The words came anyway. The fall had caused permanent damage. Loss of movement. No sensation from the waist down. His upper body was fine. But his legs, they weren't coming back. Diane broke. Nathan didn't. Not because he was strong. Because he couldn't process it. His mind rejected it. His father, the man who never stopped moving, was never going to walk again. And inside his head, one sentence kept repeating. A man walks on his own two legs. They entered the room. Glenn was awake, staring at the ceiling. When he saw them, he didn't smile, didn't speak. Diane took his hand. "Dad," Nathan said. Glenn turned his head, looked at him for a second, then looked away. Something had changed. Not just physically, something deeper. Like a light had gone out. In the weeks that followed, Glenn spoke less and less. Doctors explained. Therapists encouraged. Plans were made. Diane listened to everything. Took notes. Asked questions. Nathan showed up every day after work. But Glenn was already somewhere else. When he finally came home, the house had changed. Ramps installed. Furniture moved. A special bed in place. The home he had built with his own hands now had to adapt to him. Nathan helped with everything. At first, Glenn allowed it. Quietly. But slowly, that changed. I'll do it myself. Again and again. Even when he couldn't. Even when it took 5 minutes to do something that once took 5 seconds. That wasn't strength. That was pride. The kind that hurts. The kind that builds walls. Months passed. Then years. Therapy continued. But Glenn stopped living. No garage. No games. No conversations. Just silence. And that silence grew. Until it filled everything between him and his son. They didn't argue. They didn't fight. Which made it worse. They just stopped reaching for each other. Nathan started visiting less. Not because he didn't care. Because he didn't know what to do anymore. Every visit felt the same. Forced conversations. Heavy air. Nothing moving forward. Diane held everything together. She quit her job. Stayed home full-time. Took care of Glenn. And every night, when the house finally went quiet, she would sit at the edge of the bed, look at the Virgin Mary, and pray. For years passed. 4. One night, Nathan sat in his apartment, looked at his phone, and realized something that hit harder than anything before. It had been 5 weeks since he last saw his father, and for the first time, he didn't know if the distance between them could ever be crossed again. The image had been there since their wedding day. Same place, same position. Diane never moved it. She never asked for something impossible, never begged for a miracle. She only asked for one thing. Her husband and her son together again. Talking. Sitting in the same room without that silence between them. Being a family. That was the weight she carried. Not the daily care. Not the exhaustion. She handled that with love, even when her body begged her to rest. The real weight was watching the two people she loved most drift further and further apart, and not knowing how to stop it. One Saturday morning, Nathan finally came. 6 weeks had passed. Diane opened the door and pulled him into a quiet hug. No words. Just relief. Glenn was in the living room. Nathan stepped inside. Their eyes met for a second. Glenn gave a small nod, then turned back to the window. Nathan followed his mother into the kitchen. Coffee was already brewing. They sat at the table, the same one they'd used for years. That's when Diane spoke. Not gently, not indirectly. Direct, honest, tired. Nathan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to listen before you say no. Nathan stayed quiet. There's a shrine, about 25 miles from here. I want you to take your father there. Nathan almost laughed. Not out of disrespect, out of disbelief. Mom, you know he's not going to agree to that. I know, she said. I know he doesn't want to go anywhere. She leaned forward slightly. But I can't do this alone anymore. Nathan looked at her. Maybe he doesn't need me right now. Maybe he needs you. Silence. Try, she said. Not for the shrine. Not for a miracle. Try because something has to change. Nathan stared into his coffee, then looked back at her. He won't accept it. Then don't give him the option to accept it. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Take him anyway. Another pause. Do this for me. Do this for him. Do this for yourself. Nathan didn't answer that day, but the request didn't leave him. It followed him home, stayed in his head, and the more he thought about it, the more he understood something uncomfortable. His mother wasn't asking for a miracle. She was asking for movement. Because if nothing changed, he wasn't going to lose his father physically. He was going to lose him completely. 3 weeks later, Nathan came back. This time, with something in his trunk. An adapted chair. Reinforced wheels. Wide base for uneven terrain. Strong handles. Built for long distances. He had researched it. Ordered it. Waited. Diane opened the door and saw him pulling it out. She didn't ask a single question. She just watched. Nathan walked into the living room. Dad, we're going out. Glenn looked at him slowly. Where? There's a place Mom wants you to see. A shrine. Glenn let out a dry, almost amused breath. I'm not going anywhere. Especially not there. I know, Nathan said. And I'm not asking. Silence. I'm telling you. We're going. Glenn stared at him. Long, steady. You serious? I am. 25 miles. Glenn asked. You pushing me? Yes. Another silence. I didn't ask for this. I know. I don't need it. I know. Glenn looked toward Diane. She stood in the doorway, hands clasped. Eyes wet. Then back to Nathan. For a moment, it looked like he would refuse. Like he would shut it down completely. But instead, he gave the smallest movement. A shrug. Almost nothing. But it was enough. The next morning, 5:30. The world was still gray. That early light before sunrise. When everything feels quiet, unfinished. Diane had prepared everything. Food, water, snacks, a backpack for Nathan. Glenn was already ready, dressed, sitting in his chair, waiting, face closed, but present. Nathan transferred him carefully, adjusted the straps, checked the wheels, tightened everything twice. Diane stood at the door, watching. When Nathan started down the sidewalk, she spoke softly. Just one thing. They both paused. Virgin Mary, go with them. And then, they left. The first miles were silent. No words. Just the sound of wheels against pavement. The cold air pressed against their faces. Nathan wore layers. A blanket covered Glenn's legs. They moved through quiet streets, then into open roads. Fields stretched on both sides. Flat. Endless. Still. At mile 2, Glenn spoke. This is ridiculous. Nathan didn't answer. At mile 3. Turn around. Nothing. At mile 4. I'm serious. Go back. Nathan kept walking. No. Glenn crossed his arms, turned his face away. Silence again. But this silence was different. Heavier. The road changed. Asphalt became dirt. The chair struggled. Wheels caught on rocks. Sank into loose ground. Nathan pushed harder. Stopped. Adjusted. Pulled back. Then pushed again. His arms burned. His back tightened. At mile 8, Glenn spoke again. You don't have to do this. I know. Then why are you? Nathan didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know. Because he couldn't breathe. Finally. Because Mom asked. Glenn went quiet. The incline began. Small but enough. Each step heavier than the last. Nathan leaned forward, using his whole body. His shoes slipped in loose dirt. His arms trembled. And then, something strange happened. Around mile 11. Nathan smelled it. Faint at first. Then clear. Roses. Fresh. Sweet. Impossible. There were no houses. No gardens. Just open fields. And yet, the scent was there. Strong. Real. Present. It stayed for half a minute. Then disappeared. Like it had never existed. Nathan said nothing. He just kept moving. At mile 12, Glenn changed. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. His arms relaxed. His hands rested on his lap. He started looking around. Actually looking. Not staring. Observing. It's been a while since I left the house. Nathan froze for a second. Not because of the words. Because of how they were said. Soft. Almost calm. Yeah, it has. Silence again. But lighter now. Then Glenn started talking. Slowly. In pieces. Your grandfather. He was a welder too. I know. Mom told me. Worked like me. Same kind of life. Glenn looked ahead. He never said he loved me. Not once. But I knew. Nathan swallowed. When he got sick, I took care of him. Everything. Doctor visits. Medicine. All of it. One day, he looked at me and said something. Nathan waited. He said thank you. Glenn paused. And I cried, because I had never heard it before. Nathan couldn't speak. He just kept walking. Eyes burning. The road flattened. Easier ground. Nathan took advantage of it. Trying to recover. You were a problem as a kid, Glenn continued. Nathan smiled slightly. Climbing everything. Your mom hated it. I didn't. Never told you. But I was proud. I know, Nathan whispered. No, you don't, Glenn said. Because I never said it. Nathan felt it hit him. Hard. We think people know what we feel, Glenn continued. But they don't. How could they if we never say it? The sun climbed higher. Heat replaced the cold. Nathan's water ran out. His legs grew heavy. His arms numb. When I had the accident, Glenn said, the first thing I thought wasn't my legs. It wasn't work. It was you. Nathan looked up slightly. I thought everything I taught you became a lie. That's not true. To me it was. Glenn's voice tightened. I was ashamed. A father who can't stand, what kind of father is that? Nathan's voice broke. You're still my father. Glenn didn't answer. But his silence said everything. Miles passed. Pain grew. Blisters formed. Each step became effort. At mile 20, Nathan stumbled. The chair tilted. Careful, Glenn said. I'm fine. He wasn't. At mile 22, Nathan stopped. Completely. No strength left. He let go of the handles. Took 2 steps aside. And dropped to the ground. Breathing hard. Shaking. Empty. Glenn watched him. Really watched him. For the first time in years. He wasn't thinking about himself. He saw the effort. The sacrifice. Everything his son had done. For him. Nathan. Nathan looked up. I'm sorry. The words hung there. Heavy. Unfamiliar. Real. I'm sorry for pushing you away. For not talking. For losing all that time. For everything I never said. Nathan couldn't answer. His throat closed. Tears came. Not controlled. Not hidden. Real. You don't have to apologize. I do. Glenn's voice cracked. I wasted years. Years I could have spent with you, with your mother. Instead I sat there, doing nothing. The road was silent. The world still. 2 men. 1 chair. And everything that had been buried for years. Finally rising to the surface. Your mother took care of me all this time. Glenn's voice was low, and I never even thanked her. Nathan sat on the dirt road, breathing hard, eyes wet. Glenn kept going. You came to see me. You tried. And I treated you like you were a burden. He swallowed. But you weren't. You never were. For a moment, Glenn stopped speaking. He looked up at the sky, then back at his son. Nathan stood slowly, walked to his father, and hugged him. Glenn held him. Not quickly. Not awkwardly. He held his son like a man finally understanding how much time he had almost lost. They stayed that way for a while. And then something happened. Glenn felt warmth in his legs. Not from the sun. Something deeper. Something rising from his feet toward his knees. A feeling he had not felt since the accident. He looked down at the legs he had stopped thinking of as part of him. He didn't tell Nathan. He didn't know what it meant. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe circulation. Maybe the heat. But along with that warmth came peace. A calm that made no sense. They were exhausted, stranded on a dirt road, miles from the shrine. And still, something felt like it was covering them gently. Like an invisible blanket. Shall we go? Nathan asked. Glenn wiped his face. Let's go. Nathan stepped behind the chair again, grabbed the handles, and pushed. But now the silence was gone. They talked. Really talked. Glenn told him about the day Nathan was born, how he shook in the waiting room because he wasn't allowed inside. He told him about running behind Nathan's bicycle, holding the seat until he had to let go. He told him how proud he had been when Nathan got his first job. Small things. The kind fathers keep inside, thinking their sons already know. But sons don't know unless someone says it. Nathan told him things too. That every time he fixed something in his apartment, he thought of Glenn. That he kept his tools arranged the same way his father did. That whenever life knocked him down, he still heard that old phrase in his head. A man walks on his own 2 legs. For the first time in years, Glenn laughed. A real laugh. I was annoying with that, wasn't I? Pretty much, Nathan said, laughing too. And the years of silence didn't disappear. But they became smaller. At mile 25, Nathan saw the shrine first. It was simple. A small stone structure with an image of the Virgin Mary. Trees around it. A wooden bench in front. Nothing grand. Just quiet. We're here, Nathan said. Glenn looked ahead. Nathan pushed the chair across the short grass and stopped directly before the image. Glenn stared at the Virgin Mary for a long time. Her hands were joined. Her face was calm. Nathan sat on the bench beside him, completely exhausted. His feet throbbed. His arms felt like they belonged to someone else. Then he looked at his father. Glenn's eyes were closed. His hands rested together in his lap. Nathan didn't know if his father was praying. He had never seen Glenn pray before. But in that moment, it looked like he was. So Nathan stayed quiet. After a few minutes, Glenn opened his eyes, looked at the image once more, then turned to his son. Thank you. Nathan understood. It wasn't only for the trip. It was for insisting. For not giving up. For carrying him down a road when he didn't even know where it would lead. It's okay, Dad. Glenn reached out. Nathan took his hand. And they stayed there, father and son, holding on. That night, Nathan drove his father home. He had parked the car near the shrine the day before. When they arrived, Diane was waiting at the door. Glenn looked at his wife and said something she had not heard in years. Is dinner ready? I'm hungry. Diane smiled. Not the tired smile she used to survive another day. A real one. That night, the 3 of them ate together at the kitchen table. They talked. They laughed. Like a family again. The weeks after that were different. Glenn was still Glenn. Stubborn. Quiet. Proud. But something had opened. He spoke more. Accepted help with less resistance. Called Diane to watch games with him. Answered when Nathan called. Then, 3 weeks after the pilgrimage, it happened. During physical therapy, the therapist was moving Glenn's legs through the usual exercises when she stopped. Glenn, did you feel that? Feel what? I pressed your knee. You reacted. She pressed again. And Glenn felt it. Weak. Distant. like it came from far away. But it was there. I'm feeling it, he said. The doctor ordered tests. This is unusual, he explained. Rare, but not impossible. You have sensation you didn't have before. We'll intensify therapy and monitor it. In the weeks that followed, Glenn worked harder than he ever had. He complained, sweated, got frustrated, but he did every exercise. Slowly, sensations returned. Tingling, warmth, pressure. 2 months after the pilgrimage, Glenn stood for the first time since the accident. With the therapist on one side and Nathan on the other. His legs shook like branches. Diane covered her mouth, crying. 11 seconds. That was all. Then he sat down. But those 11 seconds were everything. I stood up, Glenn said, voice shaking. You did, Dad. Progress continued slowly. Glenn did not return to walking normally. But he began taking short steps with a walker. Shaky, careful, hard. Each step a battle. Each meter a victory. Was it therapy? Time. Faith. The pilgrimage? Diane's prayers? Glenn's effort? Nobody knows. Maybe that is the point. Nobody knows. But something happened, and it changed everything. 1 year later, the house looked the same from outside. Same street, same yard, same porch. Inside, everything was different. Glenn used a walker around the house. The wheelchair stayed nearby for when he got tired. Nathan visited every week. Dinner, games, conversations in the kitchen. Simple things. The things they had almost lost. Sometimes Glenn and Nathan walked from the front door to the sidewalk together. Slowly, sometimes talking, sometimes silent. Diane watched and gave thanks every night before the same image of the Virgin Mary. A neighbor once asked Glenn what had changed. How did you get better like this? Glenn thought for a moment and answered simply, my son carried me. The neighbor thought it was a figure of speech. Glenn didn't explain. He didn't need to. Because sometimes a miracle is not only a man standing again. Sometimes it is a father apologizing after 29 years. A son pushing a wheelchair for 25 miles. A mother praying every night without giving up. A family finding its way back after 4 years of silence. And that old phrase Glenn had lived by finally changed meaning. A man walks on his own 2 legs. But sometimes, he has to let someone carry him first. And if you made it this far, write in the comments. 25 miles. The distance a son traveled to bring his father back.